Elena Marsh fled to the Appalachian Mountains 5 years. Ego after a betrayal destroyed her journalism career when her cow uncovers a World War II lockbox containing 16 stolen masterpieces worth 80 million. Elena faces an impossible choice: keep hiding from the world that ruined her, or expose herself to return the Nazi-looted paintings to their rightful owner, an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor. As treasure hunters, a ruthless collector, and federal agents descend on her sanctuary, Elena must decide whether justice is worth risking everything she's rebuilt, including her life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The October morning carried the kind of cold that made Elena Marsh's breath visible. In the thin mountain air, she stood at her cabin door, coffee mug warming her hands, watching Bess lumber past the usual grazing area toward the high meadow. The aging Jersey cow had been acting strange for 2 days now, ignoring her feed, wandering off at odd hours. "Damn it, Bess," Elena muttered, setting down her mug and grabbing her jacket. 5 years on this mountain had taught her that when Bess got stubborn, there was no reasoning with her. She followed the cow's path through frost-silvered grass, her boots crunching over fallen leaves. The meadow stretched before them, bounded by dark pines and the blue-gray peaks beyond. This was why Elena had stayed, this vast, indifferent beauty that asked nothing of her. Bess stopped at a depression Elena had never noticed before, about 20 yards from the tree line. The cow lowered her head, sniffed, then planted herself and refused to move. "What is it?" Elena approached, annoyed. The ground looked wrong, sunken, as if something beneath had collapsed. She knelt, brushing away leaves and dirt. The earth gave slightly under her touch, hollow feeling. Her journalist's instinct, dormant but never quite dead, stirred. Back at the cabin, she loaded her truck with a shovel, crowbar, and work gloves. The excavation took 3 hours. The depression revealed itself as a partial cave-in over what appeared to be an old root cellar or cache, probably dug during the war years when her grandmother's family still worked this land. At 4 feet down, her shovel struck metal. The lockbox was military style, heavily corroded but intact, sealed with a rusted padlock. It took another hour to work it free. Elena's heart hammered as she loaded it into her truck bed. Bess watched with what Elena could have sworn was satisfaction. In her cabin, surrounded by 5 years' worth of carefully cultivated solitude, Elena stared at the box. It sat on her kitchen table like an accusation. She should call someone, the sheriff maybe, or whatever county office handled found property. Instead, she attacked the lock with WD-40 and patience, the way she used to attack difficult stories, methodically, unable to stop. When the lock finally gave way with a screech of corroding metal, her hands were shaking. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth and canvas, 16 paintings lay stacked with military precision. Elena unwrapped the first with the care of someone handling evidence, because that's what this felt like. Evidence of something. The small canvas revealed itself inch by inch. Water lilies, luminous blues and greens, the brushstrokes loose and immediate. She recognized the style before she saw the signature in the corner. Monet. Jesus Christ. Her hands trembled as she reached for the second painting. A portrait, the subject's face rendered in gold leaf and geometric patterns. Klimt's unmistakable hand. The third was smaller, a Dutch interior scene with light streaming through a window, possibly Vermeer, though Elena didn't trust her own expertise. She should stop, should call someone immediately. Instead, she unwrapped all 16, laying them carefully across her floor, her couch, her bed. Each one extraordinary, each one impossible. The journalist in her, the part she'd tried to bury, roared to life. She grabbed her laptop, fingers flying across keys she'd barely touched in years. The search terms came automatically. WT art theft, Nazi looting, stolen paintings. The results buried her. Thousands of works, tens of thousands seized from Jewish families across Europe. Many still missing, some worth millions. She photographed each painting with her phone, hands steadier now, documentation mode fully engaged. cataloguing, recording, the things she'd once been brilliant at. Night fell. Elena made coffee, couldn't drink it. The paintings glowed in her lamplight, witnesses to beauty, to theft, to horror she could barely comprehend. She searched for signature styles, tried to identify makers. The Monet was almost certainly authentic, that luminosity, that handling of light. The Klimt portrait radiated power. The others, she needed experts, real experts, but calling experts meant exposure, meant questions, meant stepping back into a world that had destroyed her. Your source was murdered, Ms. Marsh. Can you explain these irregularities in your notes? Did you fabricate evidence? Why should anyone believe you? She'd exposed corruption in a Philadelphia real estate empire, and they'd systematically destroyed her in return. Her source dead, her credibility shredded, her fiancé, Marcus, leaving with barely a word, colleagues who wouldn't meet her eyes. The Inquirer's lawyers strongly suggesting she resign. She'd fled here to her grandmother's mountain and built a life of deliberate nothing. No ambition, no complications, just her and Bess and the endless forgiving silence. A knock at the door made her jump. Through the window she saw Tommy Vickers's truck. Her monthly firewood delivery a day early. Shit! Elena grabbed the nearest blanket and threw it over the paintings on the couch. She opened the door minimally. Tommy stood there in his work jacket, 29 and perpetually hopeful, holding a clipboard. "Evening, Miss Elena. Brought your firewood. Want me to stack it by the shed?" "That's fine." Her voice came out rougher than intended. Tommy's eyes flickered past her, curiosity obvious. "Everything okay? Saw you up in the high meadow earlier with equipment. Found an old root cellar. Nothing interesting." The lie tasted familiar. She'd told so many in the past 5 years, mostly variations of "I'm fine" and "I prefer being alone." "Well, if you need help with anything, I don't, thanks." "Tommy." She closed the door on his hurt expression, guilt flashing through her. Tommy's mother had been kind when Elena first arrived, broken and angry. Tommy himself did odd jobs, asked for nothing, hoped for something Elena couldn't give anyone. She returned to the paintings, to her laptop, to the enormity of what she'd found. The research told her what she already knew. These belonged to someone. To families torn apart, to survivors, if any survived, to descendants who'd spent lifetimes searching for lost pieces of history. These weren't just valuable objects, they were witnesses. Memories made tangible, someone's parents' taste, someone's murdered grandparents' joy and beauty, and they were in her possession. Her responsibility. Elena sat on her floor, surrounded by $80 million worth of stolen art, and felt the weight of history pressing down. She could rebury them, pretend this never happened, maintain the isolation that had kept her safe, if not happy, or she could do what once would have been automatic, the right thing, regardless of personal cost. The phone in her hand felt heavy. She pulled up the FBI's website, found the art crime team contact information. Her thumb hovered over the screen. 5 years of silence. 5 years of safety. But these paintings had been silent long enough. Elena didn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by open browser tabs, printouts and scribbled notes, watching her cabin transform into the chaotic workspace she'd once maintained at the Inquirer. 3 nights passed this way, the paintings leaning against walls like silent judges. The research consumed her. Nazi art looting wasn't just theft, it was systematic cultural genocide. The ERR, Einsatzstab Reichsleiter Rosenberg, had catalogued and seized entire collections from Jewish families across Europe. Art dealers, museum curators, and SS officers had created elaborate paper trails to legitimize plunder. Tens of thousands of works scattered across the world, many still missing. She found databases, registries, restitution cases spanning decades. Some families had recovered pieces after 50-year legal battles. Others had settled for token payments from museums, unwilling to surrender acquisitions. The Washington Principles on Nazi-confiscated art established moral guidelines, but enforcement remained murky. International law, domestic law, statute of limitations. The legal labyrinth was vast. Elena photographed details obsessively, signatures, canvas weave, frame construction, any marking that might identify provenance. The Klimt portrait bore a small inventory number on its stretcher, G2847, Nazi cataloguing. Her stomach turned. By the second night, she'd narrowed possibilities. Several paintings matched descriptions in the art loss register. The Monet appeared in pre-war auction records from Vienna. The Klimt, she found a grainy photograph in a 1936 exhibition catalogue. The Rosenbaum collection, it was labelled. Private collectors, prominent patrons. More searching revealed their fate. Maximilian and Sarah Rosenbaum, deported 1938, died in camps. Collections seized, partially recovered by monuments men, but 16 pieces remained missing. Their daughter survived. Tommy spoke from the doorway where he'd been listening. "I can help." "I know these mountains better than anyone," Victor nodded. "I have contacts at the tribunal. I can ensure they're prepared to receive the paintings and fast-track the process." Rebecca closed her laptop. "I'll handle the legal complications. File motions to slow Price's lawsuit, create procedural delays. And I'll move the real transport," Tommy said. "With whoever else you trust." They looked at each other around the table. An FBI agent, a Holocaust survivor, a corporate lawyer, a grey market facilitator, a mountain handyman, and a reclusive journalist. An unlikely team united by a shared goal. 72 hours, Cole said. "We plan carefully, move fast, and get these paintings to the tribunal before Price realizes what's happening." Elena looked at Sarah Rosenbaum's portrait, frozen in gold and time, and felt something like hope. Maybe they could do this. Maybe collective action could triumph over individual greed. "Then let's get to work," she said. The plan unfolded over 48 hours of meticulous preparation. Cole arranged an official FBI transport. Armored van, full security detail, paperwork filed through proper channels. The decoy would leave at noon on Thursday, traveling the main highway route toward the regional FBI office. Price's people would follow it, intercept it if they dared, and discover 16 carefully prepared forgeries, high-quality reproductions Webb had obtained from a museum friend for educational purposes. The real paintings would move separately. Tommy and Victor would drive them in Tommy's unmarked pickup, taking back roads through the mountains, avoiding main routes and surveillance. Elena and Maggie would travel with Dr. Webb in his car, arriving at the International Tribunal's regional office from a different direction. Rebecca would remain behind, creating legal chaos to distract Price's attorneys. "It's risky," Cole admitted the night before execution. "If Price discovers the switch, he'll go after the real transport." "He won't discover it in time," Victor said with confidence. "I've run operations like this. The key is commitment. Everyone plays their role without deviation." Thursday morning arrived grey and cold. Elena woke before dawn, checking on the paintings one final time. They'd been carefully packed by Webb, each wrapped in archival materials and loaded into reinforced crates. Looking at them, Elena felt the weight of everything they represented: stolen history, murdered parents, decades of waiting, and finally, possibly, justice. Tommy arrived at 6 a.m. with his truck cleaned and fueled. Victor appeared shortly after, carrying equipment Elena didn't recognize: GPS scramblers, encrypted radios, the tools of someone who'd spent decades operating in gray spaces. "You ready?" Tommy asked Elena. "No, but we're doing it anyway." The official FBI transport left precisely at noon, drawing immediate attention. News helicopters followed it. Price's vehicles, black SUVs that had been watching Elena's property for days, pulled into pursuit. Sheriff Pritchard's deputies provided escort, making the whole operation look official and vulnerable. Tommy waited 30 minutes, then loaded the real paintings and departed through Elena's back access road. Elena and Maggie followed an hour later with Webb, taking a completely different route. For 3 hours, everything went according to plan. Tommy's radio check-ins were regular and calm. Cole confirmed the decoy transport was being followed but not intercepted. Price was being careful, legal, waiting for the right moment. Rebecca sent updates about the legal motions she'd filed, each one creating procedural complications for Price's lawsuit. Then Tommy's voice came over the radio, urgent. "We've got company." Black SUV appeared from a side road. "They're blocking us." Cole's response was immediate. "Where are you?" "County Road 47, about 15 miles from the interstate." Tommy's voice stayed controlled. "2 vehicles now." "Armed security. They know." Price had anticipated the decoy, had positioned people on alternate routes, had been smarter than they'd hoped. Elena grabbed her phone. "We're 40 minutes out. Can you hold them?" "I don't think holding them is an option." Tommy's voice was tight. "They're demanding the paintings." Victor came on the line. "Mr. Price, I assume you're listening. Let's discuss this reasonably." Price's voice emerged from someone else's radio. He'd equipped his security team with intercept equipment. "There's nothing to discuss, Mr. Cross. You're transporting stolen property." "My property, according to the documentation I filed." "Documentation we both know is forged. Prove it." "In court, over the next decade." Price sounded amused. "Or simply hand over the paintings now." "I'm a collector, not a destroyer. They'll be well cared for. They belong to Maggie Rosenbaum. Everything belongs to someone until it belongs to someone else. That's how ownership works." Elena made a decision. "Tommy, what's your exact location?" He rattled off coordinates. Elena plugged them into her GPS. They were 8 minutes away if she drove fast. "Too close to turn back, close enough to intervene. What are you thinking?" Maggie asked. "I'm thinking I'm not letting them take those paintings without a fight." Elena looked at Webb. "You still have that social media account?" "I don't use social media. Jackson Harrow does. And his login is probably still active on his confiscated equipment." She turned to Cole over the radio. "Where's Harrow's equipment being stored?" "Sheriff's office. Why?" "Because I have an idea." They arrived at the confrontation 10 minutes later. Tommy's truck was blocked on both sides by black SUVs. 4 armed security personnel stood in formation. Tommy and Victor faced them, refusing to surrender the crates. The mountain road felt remote and dangerous. Elena pulled up with Maggie and Webb, stepped out, and pulled out her phone. She'd convinced Sheriff Pritchard to let her access Harrow's live stream equipment. It was evidence. But Price's attempted theft was a bigger crime. She went live on Harrow's channel. His 200,000 followers instantly notified. "My name is Elena Marsh," she began, holding her phone steady. "You know me from Jackson Harrow's videos as the mountain woman who found Nazi treasure. What you're watching now is billionaire collector Damon Price attempting to steal 16 paintings that belong to a Holocaust survivor." The livestream viewer count climbed rapidly. 1,000, 5,000. 10,000. Elena turned her camera on Price's security team, on Tommy and Victor, standing defiant, on the crates that held history and memory. She explained everything. The Rosenbaum family, the Nazi theft, Maggie's survival, Price's forged documentation and intimidation campaign. "This is the choice," she said directly to camera. "Does justice matter? Do we return stolen property to survivors of genocide? Or do we let wealthy criminals take whatever they want because they can afford lawyers and intimidation?" 20,000 viewers. 30,000. Price's voice came over the radio, no longer amused. "Ms. Marsh, you're making a mistake. I'm making it public." "That's different." She kept filming, kept talking. "The paintings in these crates are worth $80 million to collectors. They're worth everything to Maggie Rosenbaum, whose parents were murdered. You decide what matters more." Sheriff Pritchard arrived with Cole and 6 deputies, sirens announcing their presence. The live stream had reached 50,000 viewers, comments flooding in with support, with outrage at Price, with demands for justice. Price's security team backed down. They couldn't act violently with thousands watching, couldn't risk their employer's reputation being destroyed in real time. Price himself wasn't present. He never was, Elena realized. He operated through intermediaries, kept his hands clean. But those intermediaries were now on camera, blocking a survivor's property, threatening violence to maintain their employer's theft. "Stand down," Price's voice finally came over the radio. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Elena said, still filming. "It's over, and you lost, and everyone knows what you tried to do." The security vehicles withdrew. Tommy and Victor remained standing with the paintings. Elena kept streaming until they were safely loaded back in the truck and en route, showing the world that sometimes, not always, not easily, but sometimes, transparency and public pressure could defeat private power. The paintings reached the International Tribunal that evening. Dr. Webb presented authentication. Maggie provided documentation of her family's ownership, her parents' murder, her lifetime of searching. The tribunal's panel reviewed everything and within hours made a preliminary ruling. The Rosenbaum paintings belonged to Margaret Rosenbaum. No legal contest would be entertained, and restitution was immediate and complete. Price's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. His reputation in the art world collapsed overnight. The livestream had been viewed over 2 million times, and major auction houses quietly blacklisted him. Justice wasn't always so swift or satisfying, but sometimes it was. A week later, Maggie made her decision. She donated the paintings to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum with the condition that they be displayed together as the Rosenbaum collection, with her parents' story told alongside the art itself. She accepted no payment, wanted no compensation. "They're not mine to sell," she told Elena. "They're my parents', and they would have wanted them to bear witness. I'm not comparing my situation. I'm not asking you to. I'm telling you that I understand fear that threatens to consume you. And I'm telling you that despite that fear, or maybe because of it, you must decide what you stand for." Maggie's voice was gentle but firm. "You can let fear win. Accept Price's offer, take the money, disappear. You'll be safe, or safer anyway. But you'll also be the person who chose safety over justice. Is that who you want to be? I don't want people getting hurt because of me. People get hurt regardless. That's not something you can control." Maggie reached across the table, taking Eleanor's hand. "But you can control your choices. You can choose to bear witness, to do the right thing despite the cost. My parents couldn't make that choice. They were murdered. But I've spent my life making it every day. Standing up, speaking out, refusing to let evil win through my silence or fear. You're braver than I am. I'm older. I've had more practice." Maggie smiled slightly. "And I've learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear, because the alternative, living with cowardice, with compromised principles, that's worse than whatever they might do to you." Eleanor felt tears on her face. "What if I fail? What if they destroy me again? Then you'll be destroyed doing something meaningful. There are worse fates." Maggie squeezed her hand. "But I don't think you'll fail. I think you're stronger than you know. You've survived 5 years of isolation, and you've still chosen to do the right thing when it would have been easier not to. That's not weakness, Elena. That's resilience." They sat together as the generator hummed and federal agents patrolled outside. Eventually, David joined them, and Cole checked in, and Rebecca arrived after hearing about the power cut. Even Tommy, released and defiant despite his legal troubles, showed up to keep watch. Elena looked around her cabin at these people who'd gathered because of choices she'd made, and felt something shift. Not confidence exactly, but determination. Maybe Maggie was right. Maybe choosing principle over safety was its own kind of strength. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay, we see this through. Whatever happens," Maggie smiled. "Good. Now let's talk about how to protect you while we do it." Cole's investigation into Victor Cross finally produced results 3 days later. He spread documents across Elena's kitchen table, immigration records, military files, decades-old intelligence reports. "Victor Cross is former CIA," Cole began. "Worked in European operations after World War II, specifically in art recovery and restitution efforts. Legitimate work initially. But in the 70s and 80s, he went private. Started operating in the grey market between legal recovery and facilitating private sales. So he's a criminal?" "Not exactly. He's never been charged with anything. But his clients have included both legitimate museums and collectors whose acquisition methods are questionable." Cole flipped to another document. "Here's where it gets interesting. His father was Harold Cross." Elena's breath caught. "The soldier who hid the paintings?" "The same. Harold was part of the unit that liberated a Nazi storage facility near Salzburg in 1945. Officially, all recovered art was catalogued and sent to collection points for repatriation. Unofficially, Cole showed her a faded military inventory. 16 pieces from the Rosenbaum collection were listed as destroyed in a warehouse fire. They weren't. Harold took them. Rebecca, who'd stayed to help coordinate legal responses, leaned forward.
So Victor has been looking for these paintings specifically?
For decades. Harold died in 1978 without telling his son where he'd hidden them. Victor has spent 47 years searching. Cole met Elena's eyes. He didn't come here representing insurance companies. He came because these paintings are personal. His father's theft, his father's secret. As if summoned by discussion, Victor Cross appeared at the door that evening. Cole's security should have stopped him, but he'd called ahead requesting a formal meeting. "I believe it's time for honesty," he'd said. They gathered around Elena's table. Elena, Cole, Rebecca, Maggie, who'd stayed in town, Sheriff Pritchard and Victor himself. The paintings were present too, witnesses to the confrontation. "You know," Victor said without preamble. "About my father. We know he stole them," Cole said flatly. "He liberated them." Victor's correction was sharp. "From a Nazi storage facility, where they'd been scheduled for transport to Hermann Goering's private collection. My father saved these paintings from being lost forever. Then why didn't he return them?" Maggie's voice was quiet but cutting. Victor looked at her directly for the first time. "Mrs. Rosenbaum, I've wanted to meet you for many years, though not under these circumstances." He took a breath. "My father was not a brave man. He was a private from rural Pennsylvania who saw an opportunity and took it. He told himself he'd return the paintings after the war, after things settled. But years passed, guilt accumulated, and he never found the courage. When I was young, he drank heavily. Sometimes he'd talk about the Vienna paintings, but never clearly enough for me to understand. When he died, I found letters, anguished, never sent, addressed to various Jewish recovery organizations. He wanted to make things right. He simply couldn't. So you've been searching," Elena said, "for 47 years. I knew the paintings existed. I knew my father had hidden them somewhere. I thought—" Victor's voice cracked slightly. "I thought if I found them, I could complete the restitution he should have done. Redeem his legacy by taking a 30% fee." Cole's skepticism was obvious. "I have expenses. Legal contacts, research costs, decades of investigation." Victor looked around the table. "But I'll be honest, and I think honesty is required now. Part of my motivation is financial. I'm 62, not wealthy, and finding these paintings would secure my retirement. But another part, a larger part, genuinely wants to right a wrong my father committed." Maggie studied him for a long moment. "Your father lived with guilt. You've lived with obligation. Both are heavy burdens. Yes, but the paintings aren't yours to facilitate, Mr. Cross. They're mine, and I'll decide their fate without your assistance." Victor nodded slowly, accepting. "I understand. But may I—" he hesitated. "May I see them? Properly? I've spent half my life searching. I'd like to finally know what my father stole." Maggie looked at Elena, who shrugged. The decision was Maggie's. After a pause, Maggie nodded. They walked Victor through the collection. He examined each painting with the same reverence Webb had shown, but there was something else in his expression. Relief, perhaps, or closure. When he reached the Klimt portrait, he stopped. "My father talked about this one specifically. The woman in gold, he called it. He said she was beautiful, that he'd saved her from monsters." Victor touched the frame gently. "He was right about one thing, she is beautiful. But he didn't save her. He just delayed her from coming home." The moment broke when Cole's phone rang. He stepped outside, returning moments later with an expression Elena had learned to dread. "Damon Price has filed a lawsuit claiming ownership of the paintings." "That's ridiculous," Rebecca said immediately. "On what grounds?" Cole showed them the legal documents on his phone. "He claims to represent the estate of an American collector named James Harrington, who allegedly purchased the Rosenbaum paintings through legal channels in 1952. He has documentation, bills of sale, provenance records, import documents. They're forged, Victor said immediately. Probably. But they're sophisticated forgeries, and they'll tie up the paintings in legal proceedings for years. Cole looked at Maggie. Price knows he can't win, but he can create enough legal complexity to prevent proper restitution. Then he'll offer settlements, compromises, anything to get the paintings into his hands. Rebecca finished. We need to move them, Elena said. Get them somewhere Price can't touch them. FBI secure storage, Cole suggested. That's exactly what he wants, Victor interrupted. Once they're in government custody, his lawyers will file injunctions, restraining orders. They'll be trapped in bureaucracy for decades. Price is patient. He'll wait. Then what do we do? Elena demanded. Dr. Webb, who'd arrived earlier for another examination, spoke up. The International Holocaust Restitution Tribunal. They have expedited processes for clear-cut cases. If we can get the paintings there, present authentication, and Maggie's documentation, they can confirm ownership within weeks instead of years. Can we do that? Maggie asked. Legally? Rebecca was already researching on her laptop. There's precedent. And technically the tribunal has authority that supersedes some domestic legal proceedings. If we can get the paintings there before Price's lawsuit advances, we'd need to move them secretly, Cole said slowly. Without Price knowing. A decoy, Victor suggested. Official FBI transport draws attention while the real paintings move separately. That's illegal, Cole protested. It's justice, Maggie said firmly. Agent Brennan, I appreciate your commitment to procedure, but these are my family's paintings, stolen from my parents before they were murdered. I will not allow a criminal to steal them again through legal manipulation. Cole looked at her, then at the paintings, then at Elena. Elena saw him making the calculation, protocol versus justice, rules versus what was right. We'd need people we trust, he said finally, committing. Small team, coordinated timing. I want to help resolve this efficiently. The alternative is FBI bureaucracy, international tribunals, endless legal proceedings. Cross leaned forward. Mrs. Rosenbaum is 87. How long does she have to wait for justice? It was a cleverer pitch than Price's, appealing to Elena's desire to help Maggie rather than her own fear and greed. But it felt equally manipulative. I'll mention your offer to Mrs. Rosenbaum. She can decide. Cross nodded, satisfied. That's all I ask. I'll be in touch. He left as quietly as he'd arrived. Cole found her 10 minutes later, staring at Price's business card on her kitchen table. You met with him. He made an offer. And? Cole's voice was carefully neutral, but Elena heard the tension underneath. And I'm not selling stolen art to a corrupt collector. She looked up at him. But he knew things, Cole, about Philadelphia, about my source's murder, details that were never made public. He's trying to intimidate you. It's working, Cole sat across from her. I ran full background on Price. He's connected to organized crime figures who specialize in art theft. People who've previously intimidated or threatened individuals in possession of valuable pieces. He met her eyes. We're treating him as a genuine threat now. Enhanced security, surveillance, the works. He also visited, Elena said, explaining Cross's pitch. Cole's jaw tightened. Cross is playing a different angle, but he's still trying to profit from someone else's tragedy. Don't trust him. I don't trust anyone, Elena said, and realized how true it was. Except maybe Maggie, and possibly Cole, though she wasn't ready to admit that. You can trust me. Cole's voice was quiet. I know that's hard for you after everything, but I'm not here to hurt you, Elena. I'm here to make sure these paintings reach their rightful owner, and you're safe in the process. Elena wanted to believe him, but belief required vulnerability, and vulnerability had destroyed her before. Sheriff Pritchard called an hour later. Jackson Harrow had been caught flying a drone over Elena's property, filming through her windows. The footage was already being uploaded to his YouTube channel before they'd confiscated the equipment. I can't control this much longer, Pritchard warned. You've got treasure hunters, reporters, now this YouTube fool. My department isn't equipped for federal-level security. The siege was tightening. Price's 72-hour deadline ticked away. Cross waited for her decision. The media circus grew, and somewhere in Philadelphia, maybe, powerful people were remembering the journalist who'd once been trouble. Elena looked at the paintings, Sarah Rosenbaum's portrait, watching with eternal serenity, and tried to hold on to why this mattered. But fear was a powerful thing, and Price had known exactly how to weaponize it. Jackson Harrow's YouTube channel, Treasure Hunter Adventures, had exploded to 200,000 followers in 4 days. His videos speculated wildly about secret Nazi gold, caches and hidden mountain fortunes, treating Elena's property like a theme park for his audience. The drone footage he'd captured before, confiscation showed Elena through her cabin windows, the paintings visible in the background. Within hours, his comment section filled with people planning pilgrimages to West Virginia, convinced there was more treasure waiting to be found. By the 3rd day, Elena's property boundaries became meaningless. She woke to find 6 people with metal detectors sweeping her lower field. Sheriff Pritchard's deputies chased them off, only to find more arriving via the wooded trails. Then Harrow himself showed up. Tommy spotted him first. Camera equipment, professional microphone, approaching the barn where Elena kept tools and winter feed for Bess. Tommy intercepted him at the barn door. "This is private property. You need to leave. Public interest, man." Harrow kept filming, his camera capturing Tommy's increasingly angry face. Mountain woman finds Nazi treasure. That's everybody's story. People have a right to know. People have a right to privacy. Tommy stepped between Harrow and the barn. "You've been told to leave. Multiple times. Or what? You gonna assault me?" Harrow's eyes gleamed. He wanted confrontation, needed it for content. Tommy's fist connected with Harrow's jaw before Elena could intervene. The camera captured everything. Harrow falling dramatically, Tommy standing over him, Elena running from the cabin, shouting for Tommy to stop. Harrow scrambled up, blood on his lip, and kept filming. "Did you see that? Did everyone see that? Violent mountain locals attacking innocent journalists. You're not a journalist," Elena spat. "I have 200,000 subscribers. I'm more relevant than you ever were at the Inquirer." Harrow backed toward his car, camera still rolling. "This is going viral, lady. You and your violent boyfriend just made yourselves famous for all the wrong reasons." He was gone before Sheriff Pritchard arrived, but the damage was done. The video uploaded within minutes, already accumulating views, comments, shares. The narrative shifted instantly from woman returns stolen art to mountain recluse harbors violent tendencies. Sheriff Pritchard arrested Tommy 2 hours later, his face grim. "I'm sorry, son, but he's pressing charges." And with video evidence, Elena watched them take Tommy away in handcuffs, guilt crushing her chest. This was her fault. Her discovery, her choices, her inability to handle the situation had put Tommy, loyal, protective Tommy, in jail. Rebecca, witnessing the arrest from her rental car, immediately made calls. "I can help with this," she told Elena. "Let me do something useful for once." She pulled strings Elena didn't know she had. By evening, Tommy was released pending a hearing. The charges reduced from assault to disorderly conduct through a combination of legal maneuvering and the argument that Harrow had been trespassing and harassing them for days. "Thank you," Elena told her sister quietly. "I should have helped before," Rebecca said. "With Philadelphia. With everything. I was wrong." Meanwhile, Cole received intelligence from FBI headquarters that made his face go pale. Damon Price's name had appeared in connection with 3 previous cases involving valuable art discoveries. In 2 instances, the individuals who'd found the pieces had been intimidated into selling. In the 3rd, a house fire destroyed both the art and nearly killed the family who'd refused to sell. Price had never been charged, nothing ever traced back to him directly, but the pattern was clear. "We're moving you to protective custody," Cole told Elena. "No, this isn't a request. Price is dangerous, and we have 72 hours until his deadline. I'm not leaving. If I run, he wins. If you stay, you might die." The argument escalated until Sheriff Pritchard intervened, suggesting a compromise, enhanced security, around-the-clock surveillance, but Elena could remain on her property. Cole agreed reluctantly, making calls to bring in additional agents. That night, someone cut Elena's power lines. She heard the snap, saw her lights die, and felt her carefully maintained composure shatter. In the darkness, with only Bess's anxious lowing from the barn and the distant voices of federal agents investigating, Elena found the note tacked to her door. Bad things happen to stubborn people. The panic attack hit like a physical force. Her chest constricted, her vision tunneled. Her hands shook so violently she couldn't hold her phone. She collapsed on her porch, gasping for air that wouldn't come, drowning in memories of Philadelphia, the threats that preceded her source's death, the isolation, the betrayal, the systematic destruction of everything she'd built. She was going to lose everything again. Going to be destroyed again? Going to watch people she cared about get hurt because of her stubborn insistence on doing the right thing. You can't save everyone, Marcus had said before he left. And trying will only destroy you. Maybe he'd been right. Maybe Rebecca had been right. Maybe Price was right. Bess's lowing cut through the panic. The cow, her only companion for 5 years, her uncomplicated friend, calling for her. Elena forced herself to breathe, focusing on that sound. In through the nose, out through the mouth, again. When she could finally move, she called Maggie. "I can't do this," Elena said when Maggie answered. "I'm not strong enough. People are getting hurt and I'm falling apart. And maybe I should just... Where are you?" "My cabin." "But the power's out and someone left a note and I'm coming." "Stay on the phone with me." Maggie drove up 30 minutes later, her grandson David navigating the dark driveway carefully. She found Elena on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, federal agents restoring power with a generator. "Come inside," Maggie said, and Elena obeyed because she didn't know what else to do. They sat at Elena's kitchen table again. But this time Elena was the one falling apart. Maggie made tea, Earl Grey from Elena's cabinet, prepared with the competence of someone who'd spent a lifetime managing crises. "Tell me what happened." Elena explained everything. The helicopter visit, Price's offer and threats, Cross's pitch, Tommy's arrest, the escalating chaos, the cut power lines, the note. Her voice shook throughout. "And you're afraid," Maggie said when she finished. "Yes. Good. Fear is rational. Fear keeps you alive." Maggie sipped her tea. "But fear can't be the only thing guiding your choices." "I know something about fear, Elena. I lived in a cellar for 2 years as a child, terrified every moment that the Nazis would find me. Every footstep overhead might be my death. Every raised voice might mean discovery." The word broke something in Elena. She felt Rebecca shift beside her. "The paintings belong to your family," Elena said. "I want nothing from them. Legally, yes, they're mine. By right of inheritance and international law." Maggie looked around the table. "But I need to decide what to do with them. I have children, grandchildren. They'd be comfortable financially if I sold these. But..." She turned to look at her mother's portrait. "These aren't just valuable objects. They're witnesses. The last physical evidence that my family existed before the Nazis tried to erase us." "What will you do?" Webb asked gently. "I don't know yet. I need to think, to consult family." Maggie turned back to Elena. "But I want you to know you'll be protected through this process. Whatever media attention, whatever legal battles, I'll ensure you're acknowledged and shielded. You've given me something irreplaceable. Let me give you something in return. I don't need protection from exposure, safety from those who hurt you before." Maggie's eyes were sharp despite her age. "Oh, I think you do. And I'm very good at navigating systems, Elena. I've had 80 years of practice." Rebecca spoke for the first time. "Mrs. Rosenbaum, I'm Elena's sister. I'm an attorney. If you need legal assistance with the restitution process, she's offering to help." Elena interrupted, surprised. Rebecca met her eyes. "Yes, if you'll have it." Something shifted between them. Not forgiveness yet, but possibility. They spent the rest of the day with Maggie examining each painting, Webb providing historical context, Maggie sharing memories that brought the collection alive. She'd been so young when the art was seized that most memories were fragmentary. The smell of her father's study, where certain paintings hung, her mother's voice explaining Klimt's technique, the annual parties where guests admired the collection, but she remembered her parents. And the paintings held them. As sunset approached and Maggie prepared to return to her hotel, she embraced Elena at the door. "Thank you," she whispered. "You've given me back my mother's face." Elena watched the car service navigate away, feeling something shift in her chest. For the first time since Philadelphia, since the scandal and betrayal and retreat, she felt like she'd done something unambiguously good, something that mattered beyond her own survival. Cole touched her shoulder. "That was remarkable. She's remarkable. So are you," Rebecca said quietly from behind them. Elena didn't respond, but she didn't pull away either. That night, as Tommy kept watch outside and federal agents maintained their perimeter, Elena sat with the paintings and felt the weight of history differently, not as burden but as privilege. She'd been given the chance to return stolen memories to someone who'd spent a lifetime missing them. Whatever came next, and she knew Price's threat still loomed, knew the chaos wasn't over. This moment had been worth it. The paintings seemed less like judges now, and more like companions. Witnesses not just to tragedy, but to survival. To the stubborn persistence of beauty and memory, even in the face of those who tried to erase them, just like Maggie herself. The helicopter returned 2 days after Maggie's visit, descending into Elena's upper meadow with aggressive confidence. This time, Damon Price emerged with a leather briefcase and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Elena's truck. Sheriff Pritchard's deputies scrambled to respond, but Price had technically done nothing illegal. The meadow was Elena's property, and helicopters could land on private land with owner permission. The fact that Elena hadn't given permission seemed irrelevant to him. "Miss Marsh?" Price approached with an easy smile, hand extended. "I apologize for the dramatic entrance. I find it efficient." Elena didn't take his hand. "You're trespassing, am I? I was under the impression we had business to discuss." He glanced at Cole, who'd emerged from the cabin looking furious. "Agent Brennan, still playing Guardian? Mr. Price, you need to leave." "I will. After I speak with Ms. Marsh, privately." Price turned back to Elena. 5 minutes. "That's all I'm asking." Against every instinct, Elena found herself agreeing. Maybe because she wanted to understand what kind of predator she was dealing with. Maybe because some part of her needed to hear the temptation spoken aloud to reject it properly. They sat at her porch table, the same table where she'd shared tea with Maggie. Price opened the wine with a professional corkscrew he'd brought, poured 2 glasses. "I don't drink," Elena lied. "Pity. It's a 1995 Bordeaux, worth about $3,000. He sipped his own glass. "But I suppose you're not impressed by expensive things, are you? Not Elena Marsh, who gave up a journalism career to hide in the mountains. You've researched me thoroughly. Philadelphia Inquirer, Rising Star, Castellano corruption expose. Your source murdered, your reputation destroyed by a coordinated smear campaign." Price's tone was sympathetic, understanding. "They made you look compromised, suggested you'd fabricated evidence. Never charged you, of course, couldn't prove anything. But the damage was done." Elena's hands clenched. "What's your point?" "My point is you know what it costs to do the right thing. You pursued truth and justice, and they destroyed you for it." He leaned forward. "Now you've found something extraordinary, something worth $80 million. And you're about to sacrifice yourself again, aren't you? For Maggie Rosenbaum, for principle, for the same kind of morality that left you broken and alone. The paintings belong to her, legally perhaps, but morally. You found them. You could have kept them hidden. Instead, you're exposing yourself to media scrutiny, legal battles, and," he paused meaningfully, "attention from people who'd rather you stayed forgotten." Ice slid down Elena's spine. "Is that a threat?" "An observation. The people who orchestrated your downfall in Philadelphia, they're still powerful, still vindictive. Your name appearing in national news?" He shook his head. "That's dangerous, Miss Marsh. How do you know about—" "I know many things. I'm well connected." Price opened his briefcase, withdrawing a single document. $20 million. Cash transfer, immediate, untraceable. I take the paintings, you disappear properly this time. Buy property somewhere truly remote. Change your name. Live peacefully without looking over your shoulder. Elena stared at the number. 20 million. More money than she could comprehend. Safety, true isolation. The ability to vanish completely from the world that had hurt her. And Maggie. Maggie Rosenbaum is 87 years old. She's lived without these paintings her entire life. She'll continue living without them. Price's voice was reasonable, almost kind. You don't owe strangers your safety, Elena, especially strangers who'll forget about you the moment the paintings are in a museum. She won't forget me, won't she? You'll be a footnote in the recovery story. Maybe they'll mention your name in the museum placard. He leaned back. Meanwhile, you'll be exposed, vulnerable, and the people in Philadelphia who destroyed you once will wonder what else you might know, what else you might investigate if you regain confidence. The fear he was invoking was real. Elena had thought about it during sleepless nights. What if resurfacing reminded the wrong people that she still existed? What if they decided to finish what they'd started? I need you to leave, she said quietly. Price studied her for a long moment. Then he withdrew a card, placed it on the table. Think about it. You have 72 hours before I make arrangements elsewhere. He stood, collected his wine bottle. I hope you choose wisely, Ms. Marsh. Self-sacrifice is admirable in theory. In practice, it just gets people hurt. He returned to his helicopter and lifted off, leaving Elena shaking on her porch. Tommy appeared from where he'd been watching. What did he want? To buy the paintings. You said no, right? When Elena didn't immediately answer, Tommy's face fell. Elena, you can't be considering... I'm not. She stopped. He knows things about Philadelphia. About what happened to me. So, that's behind you, is it? Or am I about to get destroyed all over again? Tommy sat beside her, his presence steady and uncomplicated. You're doing the right thing. Whatever comes, you'll survive it. You've survived worse. She wanted to believe him, but Price's words had burrowed under her skin. Finding the fear she'd been suppressing, that night Victor Cross approached her separately. He appeared at her door after the FBI agents had settled in for evening watch, moving with the stealth of someone practiced at avoiding notice. Ms. Marsh, a moment. How did you get past security? Cross smiled slightly. I have certain skills, may I? He gestured inside. Eleanor let him in, mostly out of curiosity about what he wanted. I've been reviewing the legal complexities of your situation, Cross began without preamble. International restitution cases can take years, decades even. The paintings will be tied up in authentication processes, ownership disputes, insurance claims. Mrs. Rosenbaum's ownership is clear. Members who might emerge with competing claims. Cross pulled out his own briefcase. I can facilitate a faster resolution. My connections in the European Art Recovery Network can expedite the process. Ensure Mrs. Rosenbaum receives her paintings within months instead of years. For a fee. Naturally. 30% of assessed value. $24 million, which would be paid by Mrs. Rosenbaum from any eventual sale. You want me to convince her to hire you? The word broke something in Elena. She felt Rebecca shift beside her. The paintings belong to your family, Elena said. I want nothing from them. Legally, yes, they're mine. By right of inheritance and international law. Maggie looked around the table. But I need to decide what to do with them. I have children, grandchildren. They'd be comfortable financially if I sold these. But she turned to look at her mother's portrait. These aren't just valuable objects. They're witnesses. The last physical evidence that my family existed before the Nazis tried to erase us. What will you do? Webb asked gently. I don't know yet. I need to think, to consult family. Maggie turned back to Eleanor. But I want you to know you'll be protected through this process. Whatever media attention, whatever legal battles, I'll ensure you're acknowledged and shielded. You've given me something irreplaceable. Let me give you something in return. I don't need protection from exposure, safety from those who hurt you before. Maggie's eyes were sharp despite her age. Oh, I think you do. And I'm very good at navigating systems, Elena. I've had 80 years of practice. Rebecca spoke for the first time. Mrs. Rosenbaum, I'm Elena's sister. I'm an attorney. If you need legal assistance with the restitution process, she's offering to help. Elena interrupted, surprised. Rebecca met her eyes. Yes, if you'll have it. Something shifted between them. Not forgiveness yet, but possibility. They spent the rest of the day with Maggie examining each painting, Webb providing historical context, Maggie sharing memories that brought the collection alive. She'd been so young when the art was seized that most memories were fragmentary. The smell of her father's study, where certain paintings hung, her mother's voice explaining Klimt's technique, the annual parties where guests admired the collection, but she remembered her parents, and the paintings held them. As sunset approached and Maggie prepared to return to her hotel, she embraced Elena at the door. "Thank you," she whispered. "You've given me back my mother's face." Elena watched the car service navigate away, feeling something shift in her chest. For the first time since Philadelphia, since the scandal and betrayal and retreat, she felt like she'd done something unambiguously good, something that mattered beyond her own survival. Cole touched her shoulder. "That was remarkable. She's remarkable. So are you," Rebecca said quietly from behind them. Elena didn't respond, but she didn't pull away either. That night, as Tommy kept watch outside and federal agents maintained their perimeter, Elena sat with the paintings and felt the weight of history differently, not as burden but as privilege. She'd been given the chance to return stolen memories to someone who'd spent a lifetime missing them, whatever came next, and she knew Price's threat still loomed, and knew the chaos wasn't over. This moment had been worth it. The paintings seemed less like judges now, and more like companions. Witnesses not just to tragedy but to survival, to the stubborn persistence of beauty and memory, even in the face of those who tried to erase them, just like Maggie herself. The helicopter returned 2 days after Maggie's visit, descending into Elena's upper meadow with aggressive confidence. This time, Damon Price emerged with a leather briefcase and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Elena's truck. Sheriff Pritchard's deputies scrambled to respond, but Price had technically done nothing illegal. The meadow was Elena's property, and helicopters could land on private land with owner permission. The fact that Elena hadn't given permission seemed irrelevant to him. "Miss Marsh," Price approached with an easy smile, hand extended. "I apologize for the dramatic entrance. I find it efficient." Elena didn't take his hand. "You're trespassing." "Am I?" "I was under the impression we had business to discuss." He glanced at Cole, who'd emerged from the cabin looking furious. "Agent Brennan, still playing Guardian?" "Mr. Price, you need to leave." "I will. After I speak with Ms. Marsh privately." Price turned back to Elena. 5 minutes. "That's all I'm asking." Against every instinct, Elena found herself agreeing. Maybe because she wanted to understand what kind of predator she was dealing with. Maybe because some part of her needed to hear the temptation spoken aloud to reject it properly. They sat at her porch table, the same table where she'd shared tea with Maggie. Price opened the wine with a professional corkscrew he'd brought, poured 2 glasses. "I don't drink," Elena lied. "Pity. It's a 1995 Bordeaux, worth about $3,000. He sipped his own glass. "But I suppose you're not impressed by expensive things, are you? Not Elena Marsh, who gave up a journalism career to hide in the mountains. You've researched me, thoroughly. Philadelphia Inquirer, Rising Star, Castellano corruption exposé. Your source murdered, your reputation destroyed by a coordinated smear campaign." Price's tone was sympathetic, understanding. "They made you look compromised, suggested you'd fabricated evidence. Never charged you, of course, couldn't prove anything. But the damage was done." Elena's hands clenched. "What's your point?" "My point is, you know what it costs to do the right thing. You pursued truth and justice, and they destroyed you for it." He leaned forward. "Now you've found something extraordinary, something worth $80 million, and you're about to sacrifice yourself again, aren't you? For Maggie Rosenbaum, for principle, for the same kind of morality that left you broken and alone. The paintings belong to her. Legally, perhaps, but morally? You found them. You could have kept them hidden. Instead, you're exposing yourself to media scrutiny, legal battles, and, he paused meaningfully, attention from people who'd rather you stayed forgotten. Ice slid down Elena's spine. Is that a threat? An observation. The people who orchestrated your downfall in Philadelphia, they're still powerful, still vindictive. Your name appearing in national news? He shook his head. That's dangerous, Miss Marsh. How do you know about... I know many things. I'm well connected. Price opened his briefcase, withdrawing a single document. $20 million. Cash transfer, immediate, untraceable. I take the paintings. You disappear properly this time. Buy property somewhere truly remote. Change your name. Live peacefully without looking over your shoulder. Elena stared at the number. 20 million. More money than she could comprehend. Safety, true isolation. The ability to vanish completely from the world that had hurt her. And Maggie Rosenbaum is 87 years old. She's lived without these paintings her entire life. She'll continue living without them. Price's voice was reasonable, almost kind. You don't owe strangers your safety, Elena. Especially strangers who'll forget about you the moment the paintings are in a museum. She won't forget me, won't she? You'll be a footnote in the recovery story. Maybe they'll mention your name in the museum placard. He leaned back. Meanwhile, you'll be exposed, vulnerable, and the people in Philadelphia who destroyed you once will wonder what else you might know, what else you might investigate if you regain confidence. The fear he was invoking was real. Elena had thought about it during sleepless nights. What if resurfacing reminded the wrong people that she still existed? What if they decided to finish what they'd started? I need you to leave, she said quietly. Price studied her for a long moment. Then he withdrew a card, placed it on the table. Think about it. You have 72 hours before I make arrangements elsewhere. He stood, collected his wine bottle. I hope you choose wisely, Ms. Marsh. Self-sacrifice is admirable in theory. In practice, it just gets people hurt. He returned to his helicopter and lifted off, leaving Eleanor shaking on her porch. Tommy appeared from where he'd been watching. What did he want? To buy the paintings. You said no, right? When Elena didn't immediately answer, Tommy's face fell. Elena, you can't be considering... I'm not. She stopped. He knows things about Philadelphia. About what happened to me. So, that's behind you, is it? Or am I about to get destroyed all over again? Tommy sat beside her, his presence steady and uncomplicated. You're doing the right thing. Whatever comes, you'll survive it. You've survived worse. She wanted to believe him. But Price's words had burrowed under her skin, finding the fear she'd been suppressing. That night, Victor Cross approached her separately. He appeared at her door after the FBI agents had settled in for evening watch, moving with the stealth of someone practiced at avoiding notice. Ms. Marsh, a moment? How did you get past security? Cross smiled slightly. I have certain skills, may I? He gestured inside. Elena let him in, mostly out of curiosity about what he wanted. I've been reviewing the legal complexities of your situation, Cross began without preamble. International restitution cases can take years, decades even. The paintings will be tied up in authentication processes, ownership disputes, insurance claims. Mrs. Rosenbaum's ownership is clear. To you and me, perhaps. But there are many interested parties. Insurance companies who paid out claims in the 1940s, museums that might contest provenance, even other surviving family. Elena saw the black Mercedes navigating the rutted driveway with inappropriate speed, and her stomach dropped. She hadn't spoken to her sister in 4 years, hadn't wanted to. But here, Rebecca was, stepping out in designer clothes and city shoes, looking around at the mountain property with barely concealed disdain. Elena, Rebecca. They faced each other across 20 feet of packed earth. A chasm of hurt and betrayal between them. I saw the news, Rebecca said. Thought maybe you'd want family around. Since when are we family? Rebecca flinched but recovered. Can we talk inside? Against her better judgment, Elena let her in. Rebecca's eyes went immediately to the paintings. Cole had allowed them to remain on site under guard until Maggie's arrival. Jesus Christ, Rebecca breathed. They're real. Yes. Do you understand what this means? The finder's fee alone could be, I'm not keeping them, Rebecca. They belong to Maggie Rosenbaum. You found them. You have rights. I have the right to do the right thing. Elena's voice rose. Why are you really here? Let me guess, you want me to claim a fee and split it? Or maybe you're worried this will embarrass the family again? Which Elena is it this time? The greedy one or the martyred one? Rebecca's expression hardened. I'm here because whether you believe it or not, I care about you. And yes, I think you're being foolish. You don't owe the world anything, Elena, not after what it did to you, what it did to me, what you did to me. 5 years of suppressed rage erupted. You sided with them. You told me to drop the investigation, to let corruption slide because it was inconvenient for your corporate law career. When they came after me, where were you? Being practical. Your stubbornness destroyed everything. The door opened, cutting off their argument. A man entered without knocking, 50s, silver hair, wearing a suit too expensive for these mountains. 3 deputies tried to stop him, but he'd somehow gotten past the perimeter. Ms. Marsh. Victor Cross, art recovery specialist. His accent was European, hard to place. He handed her an embossed business card. I represent several insurance companies who originally underwrote coverage for the Rosenbaum collection. We have significant legal interests in these paintings. Cole appeared immediately. How did you get past our perimeter? Cross smiled smoothly. I have experience navigating bureaucratic obstacles. Ms. Marsh, the restitution process is complex and costly. My firms can facilitate for a fee, Cole interrupted. Naturally. But we can ensure the paintings reach their rightful destinations efficiently, without years of legal battles. Cross turned back to Elena. I understand you're meeting with Mrs. Rosenbaum tomorrow. Admirable. But sentiment doesn't navigate international art law. My services. I think you should leave, Elena said. Cross's smile never wavered. Of course. I'll be staying in town should you reconsider. These matters tend to become complicated. You may need experienced assistance. He left as smoothly as he'd entered. Cole immediately made calls. Running background on Cross. Elena saw the concern on his face and felt her control slipping further. The final intrusion came by helicopter just before sunset. The aircraft landed brazenly in her upper meadow, the same meadow where she'd found the paintings. A single man emerged, walking toward her cabin with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Tommy's truck roared up from the access road, parking sideways to block the man's path. Tommy jumped out, protective fury obvious. Sir, this is private property, and I'm here on private business. The man, mid-50s, expensively dressed, radiating entitled power, pulled out a business card and held it toward Elena, who'd emerged with Cole at the commotion. Damon Price, collector, I'd like to make you an offer. The paintings aren't for sale, Elena said. Everything's for sale, Miss Marsh. I pay better than museums. He smiled. I'll be in touch. He returned to his helicopter and lifted off, leaving Tommy furious, Cole making more calls, and Elena feeling like she'd been marked by a predator. That night, Tommy stayed in his truck near her cabin despite her protests. Rebecca remained in town at the only hotel, but promised to return. Victor Cross was somewhere nearby, waiting. Damon Price had made his presence known. Reporters still camped at her property line. Treasure hunters prowled her borders. And tomorrow, Maggie Rosenbaum would arrive. The woman whose parents' faces gazed out from the paintings. The woman who'd survived the Holocaust and spent a lifetime searching for stolen pieces of her history. Elena lay in bed, unable to sleep, surrounded by federal agents and growing chaos. Her sanctuary had become a battleground. Her careful isolation shattered completely. The paintings seemed to watch her in the darkness, witnesses to everything she'd tried to escape finding her anyway. The car service arrived at 10 a.m. exactly. A simple black sedan, not the spectacle Elena had half expected. She watched from her window as two figures emerged, a middle-aged man she assumed was the grandson, and a small, elegant woman moving with careful dignity. Margaret Rosenbaum was dressed simply but perfectly. A navy dress, a silk scarf, sensible shoes. Her white hair was styled, her posture erect despite her age. She looked around at the mountain landscape with interest, but not judgment, and when her eyes found Elena on the porch, something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, though they'd never met. Miss Rosenbaum. Elena descended the steps. Unsure of protocol. "Maggie, please." Her voice carried the faintest accent, German rounded by 80 years in America. "And you're Elena. Thank you for allowing me to come. I'm sorry it took so long." "For you to find them, I mean." Maggie's hand touched Elena's arm briefly. "You found them. That's what matters." Cole and Dr. Webb waited inside with the paintings. Rebecca had arrived early and stood awkwardly near the kitchen. Tommy watched from outside, giving Elena space but present. The federal presence had been minimized, just Cole and one other agent, to make the meeting feel less like an investigation. "Are you ready?" Elena asked Maggie at the door. "I don't know. How does one prepare to see ghosts?" They entered together. The paintings were arranged chronologically according to Webb's research, creating a narrative of the Rosenbaum family's collecting history. Maggie stopped just inside the threshold, her grandson's hand on her elbow for support. She walked slowly to the first painting, a small landscape by Sheila. Her fingers hovered near the frame without touching. She whispered something in German, then moved to the next. And the next. Working through the collection methodically, her face controlled, but her hands trembling. The third painting from the end was the Klimt portrait. Sarah Rosenbaum, frozen at 28, gold leaf catching the morning light through Elena's windows. Maggie stopped, made a small sound, reached out and touched the frame. "Meine Mutter," she whispered. "My mother." "I was 7. The room held its breath. Even Cole, trained for professional detachment, looked away. Maggie spoke without turning. "She was beautiful, wasn't she?" Everyone said so. "Papa commissioned Klimt for their 15th anniversary. I remember sitting in the studio while she posed. Klimt gave me candies to keep me quiet." Her voice remained steady, controlled by decades of practiced grief. "I remember this painting hanging in our salon. The light from the windows made the gold shine. Sometimes I would stand in front of it and imagine my mother watching me." She turned to face them, tears on her cheeks, but her composure intact. Then one day men came with lists. They catalogued everything. Papa tried to negotiate, to buy time. They took him first. Mama hid me with the Kaufmans next door before they came for her. Maggie touched the portrait again. "I never saw her after that morning. I was 7. I'm 87 now. I've lived 80 years without my parents, but they've been frozen at the ages they were taken." Elena felt her own tears falling. Rebecca wiped her eyes. Dr. Webb looked at the floor. "I need to sit," Maggie said. They moved to Elena's kitchen table, mismatched chairs, chipped mugs, nothing elegant enough for this moment. Maggie's grandson, David, made tea while Maggie gathered herself. "Tell me how you found them," she said to Elena. Elena explained about Bess, the collapsed ground, the military lockbox, about the research, the decision to call the FBI, the authentication. Maggie listened intently, asking occasional questions. "The soldier who hid them, do you know his name?" "Harold Cross. He bought this property after the war. I don't know if he was at the liberation of the storage facility where these were kept, or if he acquired them some other way." Maggie nodded slowly. "Not a hero, then?" "Not quite a thief. Something in between." She sipped her tea. "War does that to people. Creates moral gray areas. He could have sold them, but he didn't. He could have returned them, but he didn't. Instead, he buried them here and carried the secret to his grave. I'm sorry it took so long. Don't apologize." "Child!" Maggie's hand covered Elena's. "You found them. You could have kept them, sold them, buried them again. Instead, you called authorities despite—" She glanced at Cole. "Despite whatever fears you had about exposing yourself. Dr. Webb told me about Philadelphia. About what happened to your career." Elena stiffened. "That's not relevant, isn't it? You were destroyed for pursuing truth. You fled here to hide. Then you found something that would expose you again, and you chose truth anyway. Maggie squeezed Elena's hand. That's not irrelevant. That's courage. But Tommy had seen the government vehicles. He approached the cabin with the protective wariness of someone who'd grown up in these mountains, where federal presence usually meant trouble. Miss Elena. He looked past her to the strangers, the equipment, the paintings visible through the open door. Everything all right? It's fine, Tommy. FBI art crime team, Cole said, showing credentials. We're investigating a discovery on Ms. Marsh's property. Tommy's expression hardened. What kind of discovery? That's confidential. Elena? She stepped onto the porch, pulling the door half closed behind her. I found something in the meadow. Something valuable. I called the FBI to handle it properly. Tommy stared at her, hurt flashing across his face. You found something and didn't tell me? It's complicated. I've been helping you for 5 years. I thought He stopped himself. You know what? Fine. You want to handle it alone? Handle it alone. He turned back to his truck. Elena started after him, but Cole's voice stopped her. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Ms. Marsh, we need you to answer more questions. She watched Tommy drive away, guilt settling heavy in her chest. Another casualty of her choices. Another person hurt by her inability to trust. Inside, Cole was making calls. Dr. Webb would arrive tomorrow. In the meantime, her property was officially a crime scene. Federal agents would maintain security overnight. Elena sat in her cabin, surrounded by strangers and stolen art, and felt her carefully constructed isolation crumbling. The world she'd fled was flooding back in, bringing all its complications, judgments, and dangers. The paintings watched silently, witnesses to her unraveling. Dr. Harrison Webb arrived at dawn carrying equipment cases and radiating scholarly excitement that made him seem younger than his 67 years. He wore a rumpled tweed jacket despite the mountain cold, and his eyes went immediately to the paintings with something like reverence. My God, he breathed, not even greeting Eleanor first. May I? Dr. Webb, this is Elena Marsh, Cole began. But Webb was already crouching before the Monet, pulling magnification glasses from his pocket. Water lilies, small study, probably 1914 to 1917, based on the palette and composition. He spoke rapidly, more to himself than them. Canvas, weave consistent with period, stretcher construction correct for French manufacture, signature placement typical of later works. He looked up at Elena with tears in his eyes. Do you understand what you found? I think so. Let me see the others. For 6 hours, Webb examined each painting with equipment Elena didn't recognize. UV lights revealing underpaint and restoration history, microscopic analysis of brushwork and pigment, X-rays showing compositional changes beneath the surface. He narrated constantly, providing historical context that made the art feel more real and more heartbreaking. The third painting stopped him completely. The Klimt portrait. Elena had suspected its importance, but Webb's reaction confirmed it. This is Sarah Rosenbaum, he said quietly, touching the frame with trembling fingers. Gustav Klimt painted her in 1912, commissioned by her husband Maximilian. She was 28. The painting hung in their Vienna apartment until 1938. Cole leaned forward. You recognize it specifically? I've been researching Nazi-looted art for 40 years. I know every missing piece from the major Viennese collections. Webb pulled out his own laptop, showing them a grainy black-and-white photograph from a 1936 exhibition catalogue. The Rosenbaum collection, 16 pieces total, seized March 1938. The family was deported in November. Maximilian and Sarah died at Mauthausen concentration camp. The cabin fell silent. Elena stared at the portrait. The woman's elegant pose, the gold leaf catching light, her expression serene and unaware of what was coming. Their daughter survived, Webb continued softly. Margaret Rosenbaum, called Maggie. She was 7 years old when her parents were taken. Catholic neighbors hid her until liberation. Then she immigrated to America in 1947. He looked up at them. She's still alive, 87 years old, living in New York City. She spent her entire adult life working with Holocaust recovery organizations. Elena felt the weight of history settle fully on her shoulders. This wasn't abstract anymore. This was someone's mother, someone's stolen childhood, someone still alive who might finally see her parents' faces captured in paint. Can you contact her? Elena asked. The moment we confirm authentication. Webb returned to his examination, working with renewed intensity. By early afternoon, he'd authenticated all 16 paintings. The Monet was genuine, the Klimt indisputable. The others, works by Schiele, Kokoschka, and other Austrian and German masters, all matched provenance records from the Rosenbaum collection, together worth over $80 million. More importantly, irreplaceable witnesses to a family's history and loss. How did they get here? Cole asked the question they'd all been circling. West Virginia, buried on property that wasn't owned by the Rosenbaums. 40 years after the war ended, Elena had been researching this too. My grandmother bought this property in 1978 from a veterans' estate sale. Army private named Harold Cross. He'd purchased it through the GI Bill in 1946, lived here until he died. Cross was a liberator. Maybe. Or he stole them from a Nazi storage facility. Or from another soldier who'd already stolen them. Elena felt sick saying it. The monuments men recovered thousands of pieces, but plenty went missing during chaos of liberation. Some soldiers thought they'd earned souvenirs. Webb nodded grimly. It's an ugly truth. Not all liberators were heroes. Some saw opportunity. So this cross hides them here, never surfaces them, dies, and they sit buried for another 50 years. Cole shook his head. Why not sell them? Guilt? Webb suggested. Or maybe he planned to return them, but never found the courage. Or maybe he died before he could tell anyone where they were hidden. They'd never know. But the paintings were here now, authenticated and accounted for. The question was what happened next. Cole made the call to his superiors, then to the Holocaust art recovery organizations Webb recommended. Within hours, they'd located Maggie Rosenbaum. She'd been contacted, informed, and was making arrangements to travel. Elena's phone, silent for years except for Tommy's occasional calls, began ringing. Unknown numbers blocked calls. She turned it off, but the news was spreading. Webb's authentication had leaked to art world circles. Online forums buzzed with speculation. A Reuters stringer picked up the story. By evening, Elena's email had exploded. Her old Philadelphia Inquirer address, which she'd kept but never checked, contained 300 unread messages. Reporters requesting interviews, old colleagues expressing shock that she'd resurfaced. And one email that made her blood run cold. Elena, I saw the news. We need to talk about what you found. Some things are better left buried. Could be anyone. Could be Marcus, her ex-fiancé. Could be someone from the corruption case. Could be nothing, but it felt like a threat. Everything all right. Cole noticed her staring at her phone. Just old ghosts. Elena closed her laptop. When will Maggie Rosenbaum arrive? Tomorrow. She's driving up with her grandson. Cole studied her. This will get bigger before it's over. Media will descend. People with claims, legitimate or not. Are you prepared for that? No. His almost smile carried unexpected warmth. At least you're honest. That night, Elena sat alone with the paintings after the FBI team left for their hotel. She looked at Sarah Rosenbaum's portrait, young, vibrant, frozen forever at 28. A woman who'd loved art enough to commission her own portrait from Klimt. A woman who died in a camp, reduced to a number and ash. But her face survived. Her family's taste and wealth and joy survived in these paintings that had wandered so far from home. Tomorrow, her daughter would see them, would touch them, would remember parents she'd barely known, but never forgotten. Elena felt tears on her face, the first she'd cried in 5 years. For Sarah and Maximilian Rosenbaum, for their daughter who'd survived alone, for the truth she was finally terrifyingly helping bring to light. The reporters arrived before dawn, somehow having identified Elena's exact location despite her unlisted address. She woke to headlights at the end of her driveway and voices arguing with Sheriff Dale Pritchard's deputies about property access and public interest. "Miss Marsh," someone shouted as she emerged on her porch. "Can you comment on the discovery? How do you plan to handle restitution? Did you know what you were looking for?" Elena retreated inside, pulse hammering. This was Philadelphia again. The media circus, the scrutiny, the feeling of being hunted. Cole arrived an hour later, grim-faced. "We're establishing a perimeter. Nobody gets past the property line without authorization. But the perimeter couldn't stop everything." By mid-morning, Elena spotted unfamiliar vehicles parked on the access road. People with metal detectors wandered the boundaries of her property. A drone buzzed overhead until Sheriff Pritchard's deputies chased off its operator. "Treasure hunters," Cole explained. "They think if you found 16 paintings, there might be more buried. We'll patrol, but it's a lot of ground to cover." The circus expanded hourly. News vans from Charleston arrived by noon. A helicopter circled overhead. News station or curious pilot, Elena couldn't tell. Her phone, even powered off, seemed to vibrate with phantom notifications. Then Rebecca arrived. Elena stared at that line until her vision blurred. Someone was still alive. Someone who might remember these paintings hanging in her childhood home. Someone whose parents had been murdered for being Jewish, whose inheritance had been stolen, along with everything else. The coffee went cold. Elena made more, couldn't drink it. The weight of what she'd found pressed down like physical force. She could keep them. Nobody knew they existed. She could sell them through back channels. The research had revealed a thriving black market for looted art. 20 million, maybe more. Enough to disappear properly, not just to the mountains, but somewhere unreachable. The thought made her nauseous. She could tip off authorities anonymously. Mail the painting somewhere, walk away. But that felt cowardly, incomplete. These weren't just objects to be shuffled through bureaucracy. They were witnesses. The real question beneath all others, was she still the person who pursued truth regardless of cost? Philadelphia rose up in memory, unwanted and vivid. Marcus's face when the accusation started. "Just let it go, Elena, it's not worth it." But it had been worth it. Corruption exposed, a real estate empire built on fraud and intimidation. Her source, David Chen, had been terrified but determined, then dead in an apparent mugging. Then the evidence discrepancies, the suggestions she'd fabricated documents, the systematic dismantling of her credibility. She'd been right. She'd had proof. And she'd been destroyed anyway. "The world isn't fair," Rebecca had said during their last conversation. "You can't fix everything and you're a fool for trying." Elena had hung up, packed her grandmother's old Toyota, and driven until the mountains swallowed her. Now, surrounded by stolen art and the ghosts of murdered collectors, she faced the same choice. Do the right thing and risk destruction, or protect herself and live with complicity. On the third night, Elena nearly reburied the lockbox. She had it loaded in her truck, ready to return to the meadow. Bess watched from her pen, eyes liquid and somehow accusatory. "What do you know?" Elena asked the cow. "You're not the one who has to face them." But standing in the meadow at 3 a.m., under stars so bright they hurt, Elena couldn't do it. Couldn't bury history again. Couldn't make survivors wait longer for justice. She returned to the cabin and pulled up the FBI website. The art crime team had a dedicated tip line. She stared at the phone number for an hour. What if they didn't believe her? What if they thought this was fraud, another scam? What if somehow, impossibly but not impossibly, the people who destroyed her career found out she'd resurfaced? Philadelphia's power brokers had long memories, but Maggie Rosenbaum had waited 87 years. Elena thought about what made a good person. Not someone who did right when it was easy or safe. Someone who did right when it cost everything. She'd believed that once. Before cynicism and self-preservation took over, maybe she could believe it again. The paintings watched her in the lamplight. The Klimt portrait. She understood now. It depicted a young woman, elegant and assured, frozen in time before everything ended. Someone's mother. Someone's daughter. Someone who'd been reduced to ash and memory. These paintings had survived. They'd been hidden by an American soldier. The lockbox suggested someone military who'd liberated them but never completed the restitution. hidden here on land that eventually became her grandmother's property. Hidden for decades, now they'd found her. Or she'd found them. Or Bess, stubborn and inexplicable, had found them. It felt like fate, though Elena had stopped believing in fate. She picked up her phone. Her hand trembled. Fear, exhaustion, or something else. The FBI tip line number glowed on her screen. 5 years of silence. 5 years of safety built on isolation and deliberate insignificance. But some things mattered more than safety. Elena pressed dial, and as the phone rang, she felt the person she used to be stirring beneath layers of self-protection. The journalist, the truth-seeker, the woman who'd believed justice was worth fighting for. FBI Art Crime Team, a voice answered. How can I help you? Elena took a breath. My name is Elena Marsh. I'm calling from West Virginia. I found 16 paintings I believe were stolen by the Nazis during World War II. The silence on the other end stretched. Then can you describe what you found? And Elena, committed now, began to talk. Special Agent Cole Brennan sounded skeptical from the first sentence. Ma'am, we receive dozens of calls monthly from people who believe they've found valuable art. Most turn out to be reproductions or wishful thinking. I know the difference between a reproduction and an original, Elena said, voice sharper than intended. I'm sending you photographs now. She'd spent an hour selecting the best images, details showing brushwork, signatures, the Nazi inventory number on the Klimt's stretcher. She sent them while Cole waited on the line. The silence after he received them lasted 30 seconds. When he spoke again, his tone had changed completely. Where exactly are you located? 2 days later, a black SUV navigated her long driveway, followed by a white van with equipment. Elena watched from her porch, heart hammering, as 3 people emerged. Cole Brennan was younger than she'd imagined from his voice. Late 30s, dark hair, wearing a suit that looked wrong against the mountain backdrop. The other 2 were specialists carrying cases and documentation equipment. Ms. Marsh. Cole extended his hand, his grip firm, his eyes already scanning past her toward the cabin. Thank you for contacting us, Agent Brennan. Elena didn't move from blocking her doorway. 5 years of isolation had made her territorial in ways she hadn't anticipated. I need to see the paintings immediately. We'll need to document everything, where you found them, how they were stored, whether you've altered them in any way. He was all business, pulling out a notebook. How long have you had them in your possession? 4 days, and you waited to call because? The question carried accusation. Elena's defenses rose. Because I needed to understand what I'd found. Because I'm not an idiot who calls the FBI over a garage sale painting. Cole's expression remained neutral. Or because you were considering other options. Excuse me? People find valuable art, Ms. Marsh. Sometimes they see dollar signs before civic duty. He gestured toward the cabin. May we? Elena wanted to refuse. Wanted to order them off her property. Instead, she stepped aside, watching strangers invade the sanctuary she'd spent 5 years building. The paintings were laid out as she'd left them. Floor, couch, bed. Cole's professional skepticism cracked the moment he saw them. He crouched before the Monet, not touching, barely breathing. Jesus, he whispered. One of the specialists, a woman introduced as Dr. Chen, no relation to Elena's dead source, began photographing immediately. The other set up equipment for detailed analysis. Cole moved from painting to painting, his notebook forgotten. Tell me exactly how you found these. Elena explained about Bess, the collapsed ground, the lockbox. Cole's questions came rapid fire. Had she told anyone? Had anyone else seen them? Had she researched them online? Where exactly was the discovery site? You've compromised potential evidence, he said, when she admitted to unwrapping all 16. And your internet searches could alert interested parties if anyone's monitoring. Monitoring what? I'm nobody. Cole looked at her fully for the first time, something shifting in his expression. You're Elena Marsh, Philadelphia Inquirer. The Castellano corruption scandal. Her stomach dropped. That has nothing to do with this, doesn't it? Investigative journalist finds 80 million in stolen art and doesn't call authorities for 4 days. He flipped his notebook closed. I need to know your angle, Ms. Marsh. Are you hoping for a finder's fee? Media rights? A book deal? Rage flared, white-hot and familiar. My angle is that these paintings belong to someone whose parents were murdered. My angle is, I spent 4 days researching because I wanted to understand what I'd found before I handed it over to people who'd immediately suspect me of fraud. And what did your research tell you? That they're likely from the Rosenbaum collection, seized from Vienna in 1938, that the family's daughter might still be alive. Cole's expression shifted again, surprise, and something like respect. You identified the Rosenbaum connection? I was a good journalist before they destroyed me. The bitterness in her voice surprised them both. Cole studied her, reassessing. The corruption story. You were cleared of all accusations. Not officially. They couldn't prove I fabricated evidence, so they suggested I resign to avoid further inquiry. Do you know what that does to a career? To a reputation? Elena's hands were shaking. I found something good here, something unambiguous. I'm trying to do the right thing, and you're treating me like a criminal. Silence filled the cabin. Dr. Chen had stopped photographing. The other specialist pretended to study equipment. Cole's jaw worked. Finally, you're right. I apologize. I see too many people trying to profit from tragedy. He gestured at the paintings. But if these are authentic, this is one of the most significant discoveries in art recovery history. We need to handle this correctly. I know. I'm calling in an authentication expert, Dr. Harrison Webb from Princeton. He specializes in Nazi-looted art. Fine. They worked in tense silence until Tommy's truck appeared mid-afternoon. Elena saw him through the window and cursed. Who's that? Cole's hand moved toward his weapon. My handyman. He delivers firewood. Does he know about the paintings? No. Maggie did insist on one thing. Elena Marsh was to be named officially as the discoverer, with her role in restitution prominently acknowledged. So everyone knows, Maggie said, that one person's courage made this possible. Cole's handling of the case earned him recognition and a promotion offer he was considering. More importantly, his daughter called. She'd seen the live stream, had been proud of what he'd done, wanted to rebuild their relationship. Tommy's assault charges were dropped. More than that, he'd become a local hero. But what mattered most was the conversation he and Elena had on her porch 2 weeks later. I need to tell you something, Tommy said. I've been in love with you for 5 years. Elena had known, but hearing it spoken was different. Tommy, I know you don't feel the same way. I'm not asking you to. He looked at the mountains, at the land he'd never left. But you helped me understand something. I was waiting for you to see me. I should have been living my own life. You're a good person. So are you. You just needed to remember that. He smiled. I'm moving to Charleston. Got a job offer doing construction. Time to see something beyond these mountains. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too. But we'll both be okay. Rebecca stayed a week longer, and she and Elena finally talked. Really talked. About their parents' deaths, about Elena's scandal, about Rebecca's choice to prioritize safety over support. I was scared, Rebecca admitted. Scared that standing up for you would destroy my career too. I chose wrong. You chose pragmatically. I chose cowardice. Rebecca's voice was firm. But I'm choosing differently now. If you need anything, legal help, financial support, a place to stay if you ever leave these mountains, I'm here. Thank you. It wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was a beginning. Victor Cross found closure too. He visited the Holocaust Museum when the Rosenbaum collection was unveiled, stood in front of his father's theft, and wept. I'm sorry, he whispered to Maggie, who stood beside him. For my father's cowardice, for my own opportunism. You helped return them, Maggie said simply. That's what matters. Elena decided to return to journalism, but independently on her own terms. She started a blog focused on stories about recovery and justice, about people doing the right thing against long odds. Her first piece was about Maggie Rosenbaum, about survival and memory and the power of bearing witness. It went viral, not for spectacle but for substance. She stayed on the mountain, but she wasn't isolated anymore. She had Maggie's number and they spoke weekly. She had Rebecca visiting twice a month. She even adopted a dog. A rescue who kept Bess company and made the cabin feel less empty. 6 months after the paintings were returned, Elena stood in her meadow where Bess had first stopped. The depression was filled now, the ground solid. She thought about everything that had emerged from that hole. Not just paintings, but possibility. The possibility that she could trust again, act again, matter again. Her phone buzzed. A message from Maggie. Documentary about the collection premieres tonight. You should watch. You're in it, Elena smiled. She went inside, made tea, and watched herself on screen explaining how she'd found the paintings, why she'd called the FBI, what it meant to return stolen history to its rightful owner. She looked scared on camera, but she also looked determined, like someone who'd remembered how to fight for what mattered. Outside, Bess lowed contentedly. The dog barked at something in the trees. The mountains stretched endlessly around her cabin, no longer a hiding place, but a home she'd chosen to return to. Elena's phone buzzed again. Call this time. Good work on that article. Coffee sometime? She typed back, maybe. I'll think about it, and she would think about it. About connection, about trust, about building something new from the ashes of what had been destroyed. The paintings were gone now, returned to their rightful owner and displayed where millions would see them. But what they'd given Elena remained, the understanding that redemption wasn't erasure of the past, but choosing to act with courage despite it. She'd been broken by betrayal, had fled into isolation, had spent 5 years believing she was better off alone. But some discoveries demanded that you step back into the world. Some acts of witness required you to be seen. Elena looked at her reflection in her darkened window, scarred but standing, alone but connected, afraid but acting anyway, and she thought, this is enough. This moment, this choice, this complicated and imperfect return to life, this is enough. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.